In the last section, we started talking about the io.copy function that takes a first argument of something that implements the writer interface and a second argument of something that implements the reader interface. And so by passing in rest.body here and os.standardout here, we are saying these are two values of types that implement their respective interfaces. Now we're going to start looking at the actual source code of this copy function right here and get a better sense of how information is taken out of this source of data, or this reader right here, and then passed off or handed off to this writer interface here. Now, one feature of the VS Code editor that we haven't spoken about too much yet, or really at all, is the ability to look at implementations of individual functions. So I see copy right here inside of VS Code, and this is specific to VS Code. So if you're using a different code editor, this might not work for you. So I'm going to hold down the Command key on my keyboard. Remember, I'm on OS X, so if you're on Windows, I think it might be Control. And when I hold down Command, I can now hover over copy, and you can see that it turns into a little bit of a link here. So I'm going to click on copy, and that opens up the IO package. So this is the actual source code of the copy function. So I'm going to condense this side thing over here, and we're going to look at what the copy function does. So copy function takes in some value that implements the writer interface and a value that implements the reader interface. It then takes those two values and immediately passes them off to this other function called copy buffer. Now copy buffer is defined right underneath it right here. So here's copy buffer, lowercase copy buffer. Let's command click on this one as well, and we'll just be taken directly to that function. So we'll command click, and here we go. So here's copy buffer. Now the code inside of here is going to look a little bit nasty, but I really encourage you to maybe pause the video for a minute and try to read through this function and see if you can't understand what's going on. Now let's walk through it just a little bit. So inside of this copy buffer function right here, you can see something very interesting on line 387 or so. You'll notice that this function is making a byte slice of size 32 times 1024. And so this was the exact same thing that we did when we interacted directly with that read function. So this copy buffer function is creating this empty byte slice to read all the information out of the read value, or the reader, the thing that implements the reader interface. And then it takes this byte slice and sends all the information inside of it off to the writer value, or the thing that implements the writer interface. So down inside the for loop right underneath this thing, you'll see that here's that source value. This is a thing that implements the reader interface. So it has a function called read. So it takes that buffer, or that byte slice right here that was just created on the line above it, and it passes the buffer into source.read. So source.read right here is taking its source of information, like the thing that it is copying information from. In our case, it was the actual body of the request, and it's copying a bunch of that information into this byte slice right here. Then immediately underneath it, we can find on line 392 right here, all the data inside of that buffer is then passed off to the write function of the destination. And destination, DST right here, is the thing that implements the writer function. So in short, we can imagine this copy function as essentially pulling data out of the thing that implements the reader and then passing all the data inside of it off to the writer. And so that's essentially what the copy function is doing for us. It really is just piping information from one source to one destination. Okay, so hopefully that gives us a little bit more insight to what the io.copy function is doing for us. Now we're going to take a quick break, and the very last thing I want to do is I want to try to implement our own type that implements the writer interface. So that's going to be the very last thing that we do with all this, and it's going to give us a better idea of exactly how information is being sent into this os.standardout thing right here, and then eventually ending up at the command line. So quick break, come back, and that's going to be the last thing around all this interface stuff that we're going to take care of. So I'll see you in just a minute.